Only gay people can play gay parts. Only trans actors can play trans parts.
Hey, is that a role for dwarves? Yeah, can I get that, please? Yeah, why the fuck are you giving it to the tall guy? That doesn't even make any sense! Turns out there's more than one dwarf upset about Snow White. So we're going to see what he has to say.
James, you've got no problem with what Disney are doing. You think this is progressive and inclusive, and all those moaning about it should shut up.
I think you should live in the 1930s, actually, Piers, because that's where you belong.
Well, let me bring in Dylan, because Dylan is also offended, and he happens to be a dwarf actor. Dylan, I've got to say, I was very curious when I saw what Peter Dinklage came out and said, because I did wonder who appointed him the head of the dwarf actor community.
That's what I'm saying! Thanks for speaking it, Pierce! Sorry. I mean, yeah, like, who made him the point dwarf in the Dwarf War? Like, he's made his living doing that, so why can't these other dwarfs make a living being on the big screen?
The people who, it seems to me, have really suffered in all this are the 6 dwarf actors who would have expected to have roles in this remake in a massive Hollywood blockbuster, who are now not going to have that experience, or the money, or the fame that may have come with that. What is your response to that?
So it's not a progression at all to me. My issue with it is exactly what you said. There are actors, dwarf actors, that that dream to be in a major motion picture such as this Disney remake. And now, because Peter Dinklage said what he said last year, now it's taken away. And it's taken away because of quote-unquote progression and all that. And it's not right, because these are roles made for actors of my stature, roles that aren't ever really given. I can't go out for the Harrison Ford or the George Clooney roles, because that's not for me. These dwarf roles are for people of my stature.
Right.
And now it's taken away.
Yeah. Well, that's a great point, buddy. Thanks for making it. Okay, because if you don't have dwarf roles, then dwarf actors don't get jobs. Alright, I think that's been the whole premise here, is this guy made his living doing it, and then he's fucking everyone else. There's only dwarf roles for me and me alone.
I don't feel that's right. And not only that, but now think about the additional stunt actors or body doubles or that. Now you're talking multiple actors of my stature that don't get these major roles. And why? What's the reasoning? Because we're supposed to be progressive and we're supposed to just not view them as that?
Well, you know the
these
irony.
Were heroes.
The
all
irony.
of these dwarves, all of these dwarves took care of Snow White.
Right.
They all had characteristics, separate characteristics. They weren't these cave-dwelling monsters that people speak of. They all had 7 different characteristics for 7 different actors that from my community, and I don't feel it's right that got taken away from us.
And utterly agree with you.
Yeah, that didn't sound right to me, you know, because I didn't remember Snow White ever being some kind of tragic fucking dwarf story. Did you? I remember them being like the heroes. They were massive co-stars, pretty much, right? So what's the fucking problem?
Peter Dinklage spoke up about this, and that was my issue. He had in the past no issue cashing checks that were made for dwarf roles like Elf and all of that. Yes, he blew away the barriers when he did his roles that weren't necessarily made for a dwarf. But the Elf role was made for a dwarf. That check cleared just fine. So now that he's gone and done that, the progression of dwarf actors, it doesn't sit right with me.
No,
this guy who is exactly what you said, what gave him the voice for all of our community?
Let me bring James back in. So
when
James,
Piers Morgan is agreeing with you, I think you need to be concerned. I'll say that for the.
So you're telling the dwarf actor what he should feel. Having literally just lectured me about speaking for someone in the dwarf community, Warwick Davis, you now accuse a dwarf actor.
No, it's not what I said. I said that if you're signing with anyone, you've got to worry. Right. What I'd like to say actually is that I kind of mostly agree with what you're saying.
Now Sir, that's just taking a pot shot there.
No,
by saying,
yeah, it is
Pierce
absolutely
Morgan
taking a
agrees
pot
with
shot.
me.
But I do agree with what you're saying. I completely agree with your point of view, and I think that's really important.
This isn't a part of this about the stereotype.
Right.
This is about roles that were made for people of my stature that don't have the chance to go out for other roles normally.
But you,
Yeah.
James
So
Bond,
why are we
you want to
taking-
stop Dylan
I am
getting
not,
a role in a Hollywood
Piers,
film.
I am not going to get into an attack on a dwarf.
You don't want a dwarf actor to
No, I
land
do.
a role.
I am not gonna get into an attack on a dwarf. That guy, that's fucked up, dude. He has a name.
Why?
Dwarf can play a dwarf part, but I think it's important to change narratives that don't fit in today's society. And really, it
Which
might
is
be
that
better.
narrative?
It might
What's
be
the narrative?
better
What's the-
if dwarves
sir-
just exist
sir,
in
pardon
normal
me.
roles everywhere,
What's-
because they do exist.
What was
in
so
real
bad about
life.
the way dwarves were depicted in Snow White? Have I missed something?
Well, listen, I'm not here to talk about.
That's what I'm kind of wondering as
well,
well.
I don't
Tell us.
represent Disney, but I'm just saying I think I see their point of view.
What's their point of view? What was so bad about the depiction of the dwarves?
Why are you
What's the
so
point of view?
upset about a movie changing with the times and moving forward?
Because
to
I think
2020?
He's just trying to get you to answer the fucking question, buddy. You're not answering the question. What is the message that is negative that the dwarves send out in Snow White? Don't help white bitches? I don't understand.
Honestly, with great
It's really,
respect,
there is real news we could be discussing.
No, but this is real news if you're a dwarf actor who are now out of work because of
There you
virtue
go,
signaling
bitch.
idiots.
Damn, holy shit, Pierce just made a great point. He's like, we can be reporting real news. It's like, this is real news for midget people. They can't even get a job. Damn, real news. Real news. Who the fuck does this guy think he is to dictate what is real news?
But you're just
Who
using
think that
this.
everything has to be rewritten
You are just
to be
using Dylan
inclusive,
as a cheap
when in
shot.
fact it's not inclusive at all.
No, you're using Dylan as a cheap shot to attack a Wokey. That's
I don't
what's
think
happening.
Dylan feels I'm using him as a cheap shot. What I would
Wokey?
say about the Wokey thing is this. I have spent the last year listening to people tell me only gay actors should play gay parts. Only Welsh actors, so Michael Sheen, should play Welsh characters. And so on, and so on, and so on.
Conversations are nuanced.
But the moment we have dwarf roles, which are the most famous dwarf roles in Hollywood history, then the only people apparently who can't play them are dwarf actors.
weren't dwarf
and I
roles.
see there
It's a cartoon,
stinking
Piers.
woke
So let me-
hypocrisy.
It has not changed. It was a cartoon. Those weren't actually dwarfs in the movie. They were drawn, okay? So firstly...
They were
that's
drawn
just
as
absolute-
dwarfs.
No, that is
But it's a
literally-
story
They're
about
called
dwarves, sir.
dwarfs.
Well, they
It's a
shouldn't be
story
called that.
about
They should be
dwarves.
called...
They shouldn't be called dwarfs.
No, they should be called people with
They shouldn't be
dwarfism.
called.
What's wrong with
They
being
shouldn't
called
be called
dwarves?
Nothing,
dwarves.
but-
What the fuck sense does that shit make? They shouldn't be called dwarves, they should be called people with dwarfism. Well, let me ask you, what does dwarfism make you? A dwarf! This politically correct shit is so stupid. Alright? Like, I can agree to some things, you know. Put some blacks in there. Some of these things are just so fucking ridiculous.
But that's not the correct
That's the
term.
story.
Dylan,
The story
apparently
is
you
literally
you're not
Snow
allowed
White
to
and
call
the
No,
Seven
yourself...
Dylan can call
Dwarfs.
himself whatever.
Apparently, Dylan, you're not allowed to call yourself dwarfs, apparently.
I would love to hear, what should I call myself, sir?
I think you should call yourself whatever you feel comfortable with, but as a person...
He calls himself a dwarf.
Well, that's
A
great.
dwarf.
Then. Good
Yeah.
for you. I'm happy.
So now, sir, let me pause that. So it shouldn't be called Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. It should
Listen,
just be
I
called
do not want to
Snow
get
White.
cancelled
So are you
because I
saying-
think your point of view is more important than mine right now. But what I'm annoyed about is Piers trying to take a cheap shot at someone that believes in society moving forward.
Yeah, I'm actually
because really, if
I'm actually exposing the hypocrisy
It's
of the
not-
woke mentality of only gay people can
Yep.
play gay parts, only trans actors
Speak
can
it.
play trans parts.
Is that a gay role? Let me see. Is that a gay role? Okay. And I can only play the role if I actually suck cock. Hey, is that a role for dwarves? Yeah, can I get that, please? Yeah, why the fuck are you giving it to the tall guy? That doesn't even make any sense!
Now they use CGI there, Dylan, to effectively make him into an Oompa Loompa dwarf.
So now-
what do you feel about that?
Yes, sir. So now we're not only using CGI and spending extra money and funding for these movies when we could just cast dwarves in that role. Whether it be one dwarf or multiple, that like they have been in the past. Now you're taking at least one role away or multiple roles away for Oompa Loompa characters that That's what they were in the past.
You have dwarf roles for dwarf actors. You know, these people want to act as well, right? They need jobs. So it's like when they do have an opportunity to do it, now they're having it taken away from them. Because the almighty social media app told them so. That it was offensive and degrading.
These roles in Hollywood in general, are very hard for people of my community to get, besides the elf and the leprechaun and this and that. So why are they being taken from my community? That's my issue here.
Well,
It's
you know
not
why? You know
anything
why,
about the
Dylan?
stereotypes
You know why?
or
Because
anything.
people like James here, they think it's progressive and inclusive.
Nah,
when in
see,
fact it's regressive.
those are not my words,
it's
actually.
regressive
Pierce.
and exclusive.
I don't- your words.
Pierce, I will agree with the mindset of it's not right. I don't know. James seems to be in partial agreement with me on the dwarf actors and the roles with that these should be. But I don't. On the other stuff, I can't speak on that. Obviously, I'm focused fully on the dwarf community really losing roles in these films.
Yeah, I think James
And
started.
with
James
all the
started.
SAG strikes, with all the writer strikes,
Yeah.
and
Well,
the
I,
actor strikes.
I do agree with
it's
you, and I
important-
think all I'm trying to say is that I think it's a nuanced conversation, and there's a few different points of view that are valid. And ultimately, in my experience as a gay man, the reason we're upset about gay people not getting gay roles in movies is because we're not getting straight roles as well. And until we are, it's unfair that those roles are taken away from us. So, in that respect,
What's that got to do with dwarf actors? Because they can't play regular sized parts.
I think Peter Dinklage's original point is that he would like to see more dwarves in films in general, not just playing dwarfs.
That
in
wasn't
general,
what he said.
literally, a person of my stature should be able to go out for the same as a 6'5", 200-pound human. But it's just not that way, and I'm okay with that. In reality, I'm okay with that. It's understandable to me. But when it's these roles that are made for people of my stature,
Yes!
that's where I have the issue.
You know what, Dylan? The movie, one of the great movies of all time, is called Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. If dwarf actors in
Look at him
Hollywood
shaking his head
are
over
not
there.
picked to play those roles, I don't know what roles you're supposed to be playing. It's unbelievably
I have,
patronising. They've done this under the banner of so-called progression.
And it's not, again, like I said, these dwarves in that movie or in this story aren't viewed poorly, I don't believe.
No.
They're all separate characters that are actually heroes for this lady.
Yes.
And they take care and they take this lady in.
They save
so they're
her.
viewed so well to society.
They saved the
that
woman.
Now
they're hardworking. They're wealthy. They are kind. They are generous-hearted. It's hard to think of a more positive
and so to go,
narrative about any people at all.
Well, let's just go back to the 1930s, Piers. I think you'd be happy
You
there.
know what, James?
Blackface would exist still.
No.
Oh my god, what the fuck is wrong with this guy? But the problem with people that are like on the side of progressivism or whatever the fuck, is shit like that. Like, he's just pointing out, dude, you're taking out roles from actual dwarves. You know, the story like wasn't negatively depicting dwarves in any way. You just decided to deem it offensive one day, and he gets so offended by the fact that the dwarf agrees with him that he's. Why don't we go back to the 1930s? You can finally have blackface. It's like, what the fuck is wrong with you, dude? You know, it's like he takes this guy taking sides with the dwarf, and he just is like, oh, you can be fucking racist if you want. It's like, dude, that has nothing to do with this fucking movie. What are you talking about?
James, you can't go, oh, you got to go back to 1930s. No, James, if you agree with what I'm saying, you
I
can't
agree with what
get
you're
on
saying. I
Pierce's
don't agree
case
with
and
anything
say,
that Piers.
Yeah, here's the thing, Dylan.
But Pierce is like saying the same thing. You disagree with him because you don't want to offend him because he's a dwarf. But Pierce is literally like, you're telling him to go back to the 1930s when he's saying exactly what the dwarf is saying.
Just to be clear.
He literally just said what I said, James.
Dylan, just
Thank you, dwarf man!
agree when I say it, but when you say it, he agrees.
Because you're not
And
a
that-
dwarf.
Exactly, because he's not a dwarf! But he's still making the same point that the dwarf is making. So for you to agree here and then disagree over here, it makes no fucking sense when it's the same point. Oh, it's sick. Makes me fucking sick. Look at the way he's looking at him. Like, I'm gonna suck your cock later.
Hi-ho, hi-ho.